Welcome back to Season 4. I am your host, Dawn Renee Bova, and I'm joined by Cami Baker Miller, one of my dear friends that I met through an art collective that we were both involved in. She's not only an artist, but she's a fantastic writer, published a couple of books, and she is also an NLP instructor and very into mind, body, spirit, and women empowerment. So today we're going to talk about, well, actually this whole series, it's going to be a 4-part series, is awakening the radiant, beautiful woman inside of each of us. Cami and I have worked together this whole week while I've been here doing talks and readings for each other. So super excited for her to share her story, let you know what her journey was like. In this first episode, we're going to dive into that. It's really about illness to illumination, and we're going to share her personal story, some of her darkest moments, and some of the things that she has done to find a new self. Talk about her rock bottom and the things that you did to change. I know we both collaborated in a book, and she wrote about the importance of rest. As you know, I've talked about this before. Rest has not been something that I've been good at, and Cami has been a really good teacher for that. So I'd like you to introduce yourself, tell them where you're from, and a little bit about your journey.
Hi, I'm Cami Baker Miller. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama. I was born and raised here. I am an artist, a writer, cancer thriver. I'm a coach.
So tell us about receiving that diagnosis and what that meant to you, and how did you deal with that?
Okay, it was in 2018. I was a realtor, and I just sold my personal house and moved in with my parents while I found my next abode. I wanted to take my time with it, and thank God I did, because 2 months after I had moved in, I got a breast cancer diagnosis, and it was an aggressive form of breast cancer. It was stage 2. It ended up being stage 3 by the time they found out the lymph node involvement. And so I was faced with a year of treatment that consisted of 4 surgeries, chemo, radiation, just a lot that made me have to step back and learn to really reevaluate how I was running my life, and I had to really learn how to rest.
What was that emotional bottom like for you?
I don't know that I would say that was an emotional bottom, actually. I had been kind of groomed over those years leading up to that by a really good mentor on how to be relentlessly positive about things. And it wasn't in any way, shape, or form toxic positivity. It was just being able to really lean into the hard stuff and move through it in a graceful way. And I decided when I got the diagnosis and the treatment plan that I was going to use cancer as a teacher in my life. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did.
So tell us some of the things that you learned with your cancer diagnosis that you have really shared with other people to help them through some of life's darkest moments. And I know a big one is rest. That was like the first thing you talked about.
One of the things that I've shared in the past is I was a realtor at the time, and I was waking up in the middle of the night with a voice screaming in my head saying, I hate real estate, it's going to kill me. And having to face the decision of what I was going to do about that, because that was my career. Ultimately, I took that year off. I did go back to real estate for a while, but ultimately I decided to let go of that and focus on my art, which led me back to my writing in a more real way, and ultimately to coaching and to subconscious change work. I've tied it all together into a mishmash of things that make me happy. Mm-hmm. I learned how to say no to people. I learned how to say no to things in my life that did not serve me well. And I learned how to become okay with their criticism, because ultimately this is my life and I'm the only one that has to live it.
One of the things that I struggled with early on in my own personal recovery or grief journey was the fact that I had to go, 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 go. And I remember when we first met, you were an NLP instructor, and we're going to tell people what that means. But we had a private session, and we talked about the importance of rest and how therapeutic it is. If you are a person that likes to achieve things, taking time to rest is so difficult. When you're in a huge grieving space, it's hard to rest because that grief is right in front of your face. With practice and mentoring and coaching, because I believe we all need personal coaches, friends, mentors that we can bounce things off of, I have learned how important rest is. Do I still get caught up in go, go, go sometimes? Yeah. But I realize the importance of rest, and I try to put it into my day. And I've been here a couple of days with Cami, and that's one of the things that we've been doing. We've been resting and just enjoying the stillness and watching the hummingbirds and taking walks and noticing all the beautiful flowers and greenery. What did that rest do for you when you were going through this journey?
One of the biggest things that I learned, and I talked about this in the chapter of the book that we were in together, one of the things that I really started realizing about rest, if I am tired and I'm trying to push through a project, it's going to be like slogging through mud. If I actually do the counterintuitive thing, which is counterintuitive for most of the human race, and go rest instead. Some would call it procrastination, some would call it just being lazy. If I go rest and I come back to it later, 9 times out of 10, when I come back to it, I can just zip right through it. Get it done better than I would have had I tried to push through it while I was feeling that mental and physical exhaustion.
I remember when I was first putting this podcast together. Do you remember that? And we were on the phone, and I said, I can't figure this one part out. I was recording the intro, and I've learned so much now. It's like, how did I not know that? But I just worked on it for like 2 days, and I called her up, and she goes, set it aside. Just forget about it for right now. And I'm like, I can't. I have to get it done. And she goes, just put it aside and come back to it later. And finally I did, and I was able to figure it out and get it done. But yeah, that rest is just so important and so imperative to really increase your production. And it's something that I had to learn along the way. Will you tell them what an NLP coach is and what you do with that?
NLP stands for Neurolinguistic Programming, and it is subconscious change work. It's kind of a form of hypnotherapy. We're using hypnotic language as a way to help you make changes at the subconscious level so that they will stick. One of my favorite things to do is time techniques. It's based on Gestalt therapy. We go back on your timeline to your first known memory of your top 5 negative emotions, and we help you clear those using this technique. And the top 5 negative emotions, I'm going to try to get it right. Anger, grief, sadness, fear,
shame.
Shame is one we added.
Okay.
There's another one. We actually added shame.
Okay.
But there's another one. Anyway, it helped me tremendously. While I was actually training for my master practitioners, I was also being coached one-on-one by the instructor. And when we did that actual process on the timeline is when everything changed exponentially for me. That's what I brought to the mastermind that Dawn was in.
And we had our own private session. At that time when I had met you, Brad had been gone for several years, maybe 7 years, and I have done a lot of different therapies, which have been very beneficial. I've taken classes, I've done coursework, I did EMDR therapy, I did traditional therapy, I used art as a medium to help me, and all of those things were really beneficial. I thought I'm over the guilt and stuff with that death. I'm over it. But we did this timeline practice, and I traveled back for generations, and it resurfaced. It was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I was still carrying that guilt. And it's such a subliminal, heavy emotion that weaves into your cellular fabric that you don't even realize. It could be anger, like we talked about. It could be shame. It could be remorse, all these things. But guilt came up. And I had to really look at that, because if you can't identify what you're carrying, how can you change it, right? So I found that super beneficial. It wasn't like an early awakening, but it was another lesson I had to learn along this journey we call life. And there's so many of them. So I'm always changing, always growing, always evolving. I remained open enough to try that technique with you. It opened up a whole new light for me. I think it's really important that we name and we own our pain.
Mr. Rogers said if you can mention it, you can manage it. That stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's the truth. If you can name something, you are more than halfway there to conquering it.
Right.
Or managing it.
When we talk about these things we hold on to, one of the things I like to point out is that we do hold on to them on a cellular level. And that's why active participation in these healing modalities is imperative for you to come out the other side and arrive at this place where you're happy, joyous, and free. With your cancer diagnosis, there was uncertainty. How did you work through that, knowing that you had all this stuff? What are some other things that you did to those emotions and be awakened to them so that you could live this abundantly joyful, wonderful life that you have today?
I actually just knew I was going to get through it. Just put my head down and did it. I talked about it a lot. That's when I really got back into my writing, and I started posting on social media about what was going on. I started sharing my story as a way of helping and inspiring others. Hearing from people saying that I was inspiring them helped me. I was able to transmute it all into this seriously beautiful process. It was a discovery process for me. I started peeling back the layers and finding out who I wanted to be and how I wanted to move in this world from that point. And it's just grown since then. Grief was just not a factor at that point. I decided to use it as a teacher. I can remember one time before I started chemo, I was sitting there and thinking, what's going to happen? Am I just going to start throwing up all the time? When am I going to lose my hair? I almost feel like it was more curiosity. Maybe I just turned it into curiosity. I feel like the whole process was very transformative.
Because it is important to name and own whatever pain life throws at you.
And I felt a lot of sadness, but there were a lot of other things going on in my life at that time. Family things with my children.
I want to end with is the fact that Cami did really focus in on the importance of rest and recovery. Not just from a physical illness, but from grief, a job that's stressing you out, family, all of that. Sometimes you need to take a little reset and just take a rest so that you can be your full, beautiful, potential self. I want to end with this quote, and I did write it down. Your pain is the breaking shell that it encloses your understanding, and that's from Khalil Gibran. And for me, pain, grief, sorrow, whatever you want to call it, has been my biggest teacher. I try to look at it from a point of I'm going to learn some really valuable lessons whenever I'm having grief in my life. And we all experience grief at some point, not necessarily death of a loved one, but grief of changing a job or moving or loss of independence or a job. The list can go on. Try to view grief as a teaching tool. And if you need help, join me on a free class that I'm offering, and I will have that in the show notes, where I go through one of these lessons over an hour's time and guide you. Life is really just a series of lessons, and we're all here to learn. The more you pour yourself into learning, changing, and growing, the most beautiful, bright, joyous things happen in your life. I hope you join me next week, because we're going to talk about radiant expression. As I talked about when I started this season, I'm also going to throw in some exercises for you to do, because I do believe in talk therapy. I believe in subconscious therapy, but I also believe that it's very important for us to be active participants in our recovery process, using creative expression to put our voice out, whether it be writing, whether it be art, whether it be music, whether it be movement and dance. Whatever creative expression that you do, it's imperative for your healing. So I've paired that with a lesson. Be sure to look for that link in the show notes, and I will see you next week. Go catch some SoulShine.